Hi, this is Karolis. Today we have a new guest episode from our fellow Nojus Setkauskas. Nojus will guide you through the world of documentary filmmaking and activism in both Poland and South Africa. Nojus, take it away.
Hello everyone, my name is Nojus Setkauskas and you're listening to NARA podcast. Today I will be talking about documentary filmmaking, specifically how documentary filmmaking can raise awareness of human rights violations, contribute to broader systemic change, reshape existing narratives, and connect viewers across the globe. I want to share with you two conversations I recorded back in March in The Hague, the Netherlands, at the Human Rights Film Festival Movies That Matter. The first is with Karolina Domagalska, the director of the documentary Abortion Dream Team. The film follows a group of women who challenge abortion laws in Poland. In the second part, you will hear from director Miki Redelinghuys and activist Nkosikhona Swortbooi from South Africa. Their film Mother City addresses the segregation and social housing crisis in Cape Town. I wanted to learn how the creators of both films use the camera as a tool to document urgent social movements in their countries and how they connect local struggles to global calls for justice. Despite the geographical distance between Poland and South Africa, these filmmakers shared similar experiences and values. They have stood up against the injustice, attended protests, faced police brutality, and are finally presenting their films abroad. They have many insights to share, and I hope you'll find their thoughts inspiring. In October 2020, the Polish government introduced an almost total abortion ban. It causes huge response in Polish society. People walk out on the streets in what is known as the biggest public rebellion seen in democratic Poland. All of a sudden, many women are left alone and they have nobody to turn to.
Halo?
Dzień dobry, chciałabym się dowiedzieć, co bym musiała zrobić, aby dokonać aborcji pigułkami w Polsce.
Halo?
Dzień dobry, czy dzwoniłem się do aborcji bez granic?
Tak.
Ponieważ mam problem po prostu z dziewczyną, tak wiadomo pewnie jaki już i w jaki sposób mógłbym jakby to rozwiązać.
Luckily, there's a hotline run by the Abortion Dream Team. This number appears on banners and building walls, even churches. 4 activists help other women to perform self-managed abortions at home or direct them to the clinics abroad. Last year, the team helped around 44,000 people of unwanted pregnancies and assisted with an average 94 abortions a day. You just heard the synopsis of Abortion Dream Team, the Polish documentary released in May last year. Today, I invite you to listen to the conversation with the director of the film, Karolina Domagalska. She explained the legal landscape of abortion laws in Poland and the role of activists during women's strike protests that happened 5 years ago.
So I'm Karolina Domagalska. I used to work as a journalist. I'm an activist and also documentary director. I did film titled Abortion Dream Team. That speaks about abortion activists in Poland.
Okay, and it documents a group of abortion activists, right? There are 4 women, right?
Yeah, they start as 4.
Okay.
They end up as 3 because one experiences burnout because, as we all know, activism can be really demanding. And she, unfortunately, had to step down. So yes, they were 4, now they are 3, but the rest, the 3 of them, continues their work. Not long ago, they opened first in Poland, first ever abortion center where you can come and get information about abortion, but also you can take abortion pills and have abortion there. Because very often women, they need some support, they need some company. Very often we get asked whether they would manage abortion with pills at home so that nobody notices it. So they have to, hide away, and that's a great then way out to come to the center. But it's only in Warsaw, but still, nevertheless, it's really a great achievement. We are really proud of it, and also it's situated on a street that is called Wiejska Street. It's very popular in Poland because we have parliament there and also Cancellery of President. So it's just opposite those two buildings. And as protagonists used to say, this is a place, Wiejska Street is a place where all the most important decisions are being taken.
Okay.
I want to make a quick remark here. The first abortion center in Poland that Karolina mentions is Abotak, which opened on the 8th of March this year. This April, the center has been aggressively vandalized by anti-abortion activists who have thrown acid on the building. According to activists, local authorities and police were quite passive and inactive to resolve these acts of vandalism.
So when they wrote the law in 1993, because before, during communism, abortion was available on demand, they wrote this law having doctors in mind. So what is forbidden is helping in abortion. And if you help as a doctor, this is what they meant, and you perform abortion, then you can end up for 3 years in jail. But a person who does her own abortion is not criminalized. And this is the loophole that the activists actually used, because they said, come on, so you can just order pills online and then have them take them at home and have your own abortion. And all of that would be legal and is legal according to Polish law. So, so this is what they started to talk about, I think, somewhere, I don't know, 6 or 7 years ago. And I wrote an article about Abortion Dream Team because I used to work as a journalist, and this is how I met them, actually. And this article also kind of started this conversation because I introduced their way they talk about abortion. They talk about abortion in a positive manner. They are thankful that it exists, that it's possible. They use color, glitter, they use humor. And this was something that annoyed many people, and that caused, actually, I call it like, moral panic, actually, because it wasn't only like, let's say, regular citizen or average citizen. Even pro-choice movement and feminist movement, prominent feminists, they would say that this is actually harming the cause, and if we behave like this, we will never get any abortion rights.
Like in a positive way.
In a positive way, because all of that happened because there was a cover that had 3 of the protagonists wearing t-shirts that says abortion is okay, and the background was pink.
Oh, that's the only positive.
That was the trigger. That was the trigger, and you wouldn't imagine. So I even had to quit my job because what happened in the newspaper was also another thing. It was Gazeta Wyborcza, the main liberal daily we have in Poland, and they decided that we cannot do any more follow-ups on that topic. So we couldn't mention abortion for a while because advertisers withdrew their money. So that was just horrible, to observe what was going on. And also they introduced another editor-in-chief to our, let's say, magazine, and she was conservative, and she was openly saying that she's against, liberalization of abortion. So that was pretty horrible. And then, because Abortion Dream Team was already kind of working, they became a bit more popular. They were traveling around Poland talking and giving kind of workshops about abortion, medical abortion, how to take pills, how to order them, but also they would do some kind of oral history meetings for people to share experience of abortion. And then what actually made this movement much bigger was this moment in history that you mentioned, 2020, that when the Constitutional Court decided that from then on, women that was in a pregnancy that was sick, like the fetus was sick, could not have abortion. And that enraged the society because basically it's torture, right? It's torturing women because these are very often wanted pregnancies. You just find out on the way quite late that there's something wrong with the fetus. And then you need this abortion, but you cannot have it in your own country. So then you have to travel.
Mm-hmm. I'm curious about how was this whole outbreak in society? Because, Poland is, I would say, maybe considered a generally quite conservative country because of all the Catholicism, religion influence. How around that 2020 times, it was the biggest public resistance in the independent Poland's history. And how was, maybe you could just elaborate, a bit more on that. What was the atmosphere in the streets?
Yeah, that was amazing. It was so much fun. This is really something, to remember. Recently, my friend wrote a book about anger, and she describes in one chapter this atmosphere, and she talks about it as embodied experience. And this is so much true because we were actually screaming, we were screaming our heads off. And I never heard so many women screaming like that, we were so angry. And I remember it was so liberating. There's something about women scream that it's, they're crazy or just, hysterical. There's something we are ashamed to actually show anger and to scream with this maybe high-pitched voice or something. And there we were doing it, I even have now goosebumps because I've never experienced something like this before because it was in a huge, group. It was such a, community building actually experience, but also liberating. So that was amazing, but also many people, they joined. So we were marching day by day, but also people would really join. So the taxi drivers, they would stop their cars and also block the city with us. And not only in Warsaw, it was happening all over Poland. Or tram drivers or bus drivers, they would, instead of saying the name of the place that they run their line to, they would say you're not alone, or things like that. So it was really moving. And all the slogans, and posters were also very funny. We had... So it was like a combination. We were angry, but we were also kind of enjoying ourselves being together and being united against the government that was really crazy and oppressive in so many other ways,
I remember that as well. It was such an expression of freedom in a way, where you can scream it out loud. And I think it's just an expression of freedom. And what was the government's response?
Well, it wasn't that nice. I think... First day, we had huge protest. It started then, and then we marched to the place where the head of this Law and Justice party lives, and there we already were met by police, and they used some tear gas, and it wasn't nice. Even the camera got broken. My friend that was filming, she was running away, and there were some tram trails, and she was running, and then she dropped her camera, and it got broken. So we were actually really surprised because it was quite violent, and they protected, this house of their leader. And then because police was really on the government side, and then day by day, they were more and more aggressive. Some people were hurt, and tear gas again, and many journalists suffered, with tear gas. We all had special tissues with us, or because the first night I remember we were using water. and it's the worst thing you can do. We didn't know any better. So then we were prepared that if you use something for your eyes, it's better to have milk, or the best is to have the special tissue. So we got organized, and I remember not long ago in a very old bag, I found this tissue for tear gas, and I was like, oh yeah, that's good. I don't need it anymore, at least for now.
And was this movement led by Abortion Dream Team, or what was the Abortion Dream Team role in this protest?
So it so happened that very quickly the number of abortion without borders became like a symbol of resistance, because everybody said like, okay, so you are forbidding abortion, but we are doing it anyways. We have our own ways. We can call abortion without borders that will send us abroad or order pills. And it was great because this number became really popular. And it was even written on the walls, but also the best, what I saw was then that it was sprayed on one church. And we were scanning and screaming the number. So the left-wing politicians would bring the number to the hearings, to parliament. Every, at least female, as far as I remember, politicians from left if she would go to TV station to talk about this issue, she would always have this number with her. And, it became really popular, and all that seemed like, a bit exaggeration or too much, or, something that we shouldn't be using. Everything that the Abortion Dream Team proposed in the past, now it became really handy. Like, we are actually saying that abortion is our right, and we are not going to be afraid anymore. So abortion is okay was just the mildest slogan you would find, There were many others that were bold, and people stopped being afraid of even using the word abortion, because I would say that in the public kind of opinion or in the public debate, people would rather use, reproductive rights or termination of pregnancy. Abortion was kind of a bad word, and then it kind of blew up and it changed.
Mm-hmm. I think, then Abortion Dream Team really contributed to this really drastic and quick change in so much in the, discussions, and also in society's thinking, I think, right? And about coming back to your film, how did you, because you already mentioned that you met the Justina, right, before as a journalist, and how did you start to record this? Was it natural? And at what point did you started to realize, okay, I'm making a film now?
Well, so I started with my friend from this magazine, Paulina, and so we were two. It was our first film. We were first-time filmmakers, and we didn't know anything, The only thing we knew is that we know how to tell stories, because we were both journalists. But then, the film is, of course, so much more. So I remember that it was funny to start because we didn't have anything to lose, Only after Constitutional Court, the situation changed in a way that quite a few filmmakers approached Abortion Dream Team, and then everybody wanted to make film about them. And we were like, okay, if you want to change your mind, you can, because they were already experienced filmmakers and stuff. But this is the rule of Abortion Dream Team, that they like to work with women that maybe don't necessarily have experience, but have the power, energy, and, they trusted us.
Because I think you also mentioned at the beginning that you're also an activist. And I wanted to ask about, as a director of an activist film, does the director need to be an activist, do you think? Or is the objective part, the distance from the subject is better?
Well, I don't know if it's better, but from my experience working as a journalist and pretending I'm objective for so many years made me really frustrated, because I could observe that journalists that write about, I don't know, legal other subjects that are political and don't have to do with women's rights are taken seriously, and then the journalist doesn't have to be objective because he fights for democracy or something. But when it comes to women's rights, it all becomes this moral debate all of a sudden, and all of a sudden you cannot be subjective. So this was something that was really frustrating to me. And I felt such a relief after I left journalism that now I can do whatever I feel like. I don't have to pretend I'm not an activist, or I'm not a feminist, or I'm not for abortion. But my activism, I think, also grew together, along getting to know what Abortion Dream Team is doing better, because I used to be a feminist. I used to walk to demonstration on 8th of March and things like that. But, I was also frustrated because if you have this law from 1993 and nothing is changing for so long, you start thinking like, what's the point? What's the point of doing another demonstration and that just a bunch of your friends will attend actually? And then they came in and they said, okay, so we cannot be pro-choice. We have to be pro-abortion. Only if we talk about pro-abortion openly and about our experience openly, it will change. And this is what also kind of made me more involved and more, happy to think about other activists, initiatives and joining the movement.
And then as you were making the film and it's in the final version, what do you think is your favorite scene?
My favorite scene is abortion done by Julia. It's just abortion at home. I really hoped to be able to film that. We were looking for a woman that would allow us to come and join her with the camera. And that also shows how the situation of abortion changed in Poland, because when I was starting, I think you would rather look for somebody that would talk about their own experience, but it would be anonymous. So you could only film the back or some, a covered face or something. And I really hated, I didn't want to do it this way because I thought that it adds to stigmatization. And then when I met her, she was so happy to be part of it because she believed that it's needed. So she's not an activist herself, but she was so happy to be part of it because she thought that it could change something. That was also really amazing to shoot because we were there, but I also could kind of help her, support her, because I knew, what to expect, what the reaction could be, and we would kind of, be there for her as well. So that's my favorite. But I also love another scene that is with Viva. She's very religious. And she had, I don't remember how many, but a couple of abortions. And she talks about it openly. And she also thinks that God allowed her to do it in a way that God still loves her. And there's no reason why God wouldn't.
That's very unconventional approach.
Yes, and she looks like a pope because she has this kind of a hat. I don't know the name in English. So we call her Popess of Abortion. And she walks out of the forest. And this is, to me, it's like she comes and she blesses this country of Poland as Popess of Abortion, for us to finally realize that it's not a sin.
No matter what you think, Catholic, Christians, religious people are having abortions. I believe in God. I've had 2 abortions. That's my line. I've had 2 abortions. God loves me. I've had 2 abortions. God loves me. That's the whole thing. So to say God and abortion in the same sentence is, I know, provocative, is an agitation, and agitation is a part of it.
God is cool with me. The state they can't take it. God is cool with me. The church they only fake it. God is cool with me. She says, girl, I love you. God is cool with me. He says, girl, I got you. It's about my body. Get yourself out of me.
There's this humor element into it. And I think your film is quite funny.
Oh, thanks God you think that.
It's quite funny. And in the screening room when I was there, the audience was laughing at some points quite a lot.
That's great.
So that's probably comes from Abortion Dream Team
Yeah.
approach themselves, right? And it really translated to your film.
I really, that was my goal. I really wanted this to happen.
Yeah. And for me, another scene that was is just in my head right now. It's during the protest. It was these anti-protesters who were obviously against the abortions. Is the dialogue between the other side of, the people who think in a different way, is it possible or not? Because in the film, it seems like it's almost impossible to have a dialogue. No?
Yeah, well, I have to be honest, and I don't think about it anymore. Because I think we lost really a lot of time in Poland, especially, to find a way to talk about abortion that kind of brings those two sides together. It's probably impossible because when you talk ideology, you will never agree. And abortion is not about agreement or allowing other to do something. Abortion is about accepting that what I choose for myself is good for me and what you choose for yourself is good for you. It's like we always say, it's like nobody forces you to have an abortion, right? So I don't think we need to get involved in this discussion anymore because this is what politicians are doing for us and it doesn't make any sense to me.
One more scene that stuck in my head was Justyna's, the main activist, speech that she did. It's maybe we haven't really spoke about her and her role in all of this thing and her sacrifices. Because she's the first woman, I think, in Europe that got charged for helping for abortions, right? And that was, as you were shooting that film, that was, a couple of years ago. And I think now the situation changed a bit. Maybe you could expand on her story.
This one was heavy because what happened was that Justyna sent pills to another woman, to a woman that needed abortion, and that woman was in an abusive relationship. So the partner, her husband, was really controlling. And at some point he found out that she is going to get pills, and he reported that to police. So they had the proof, an email saying that Justyna did it, So then we knew, okay, it's probably going to end up in court and it's probably going to end up in trial against Justyna. And this is what happened. So because Justyna sent her own pills, she's not like they don't do it. That was an exception because she felt for that woman so much and she had her own pills that she could send because, pills are being bought online and they're coming abroad, and this is the safe way, and nobody is doing that and selling them in Poland or sending them in Poland, but she did that, and because she also had an experience of violence in her previous marriage, she felt like she needed to help this woman because she knew what she was going through. She know all the kind of, in quotation mark, tricks of users and how ugly it can be and difficult. And so then the court case took 6 hearings. It was really long trial. It's not seen in the film. It's not visible in the film, but it was really long and it was really exhausting for her. And but then she was convicted to social work, and they appealed, and now they are going to have a retrial of everything. So let's hope she wouldn't have to go through all of that again because that would be a nightmare. But as a result, she became kind of a face of the movement to decriminalize of the criminalization of abortion, and she was together with Amnesty International traveling around the world.
Yeah, she received quite a lot of support from international community.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh yes, they were giving interviews over and over again. They were, and especially Justyna. She was her case was covered almost everywhere. And now you can see with Abortion Center that you can read about it in South Korea, you can read about, of course, in States, but in many, many other countries. And she's internationally really well known. And so she became our star.
And yeah, I think you really captured well the backstage of what the activists are going through, and then how everything, the psychological effects they are feeling from it, and then the pressure on their shoulders. I think that's really captured well in the film.
Thank you.
When the film is finished, it's being shown in the cinemas, in the theaters, in the festivals. How is the reception of the film from the people that are attending your films?
So usually it's really warm welcome, and people are really impressed with what Abortion Dream Team is doing. So we premiered in Poland, in Warsaw, in Millennium Dog Against Gravity. So, of course, it's a special audience, right?
Yeah, how was it?
So it was amazing. The premiere was like a rock concert, I have to say, because it was filled with activists and people that support Justyna and know Abortion Dream Team so well. So, the moments when there are jokes, people were laughing like really loud and really long and clapping their hands. And, it was really atmosphere like on the concert. It was amazing. And then, people would really enjoy it. There was only one case of one city, because this festival takes place in several cities simultaneously. And Lublin, the city of Lublin, is on the east side. Because for local festivals, they cooperate with municipalities, they said that they don't want this abortion film. And then, the head of the festival was, surprised and said, what, why? And we cannot agree to that. And as a consequence, they didn't have festival at all last year, that year that we premiered, and this year also, because the head said, we are not going to let you interfere and censor our program, basically. So the people that came were happy, but you can still see with this Lublin case that it can be controversial. The stand that the head of the festival took was amazing, because he basically backed us up and he said, we are for abortion rights. You're not going to censor us, which is great. And especially if in comparison to what happened in the newspaper I worked for, right? So that also shows, I think, the social change that is happening.
Yeah, and then also, now you're here in the Netherlands, and then the audience is quite international and diverse.
Yes.
And then when I was in Q&A, I was impressed that you find a connection with people and the audience from Colombia and South Korea. So that's really probably nice for you as a filmmaker.
It's amazing. There was one really touching moment when the person I met, Sayan, I met her here. She was a part of a jury for short films. And she came to see our film. And then afterwards, she gave me a sticker from the movement they had in South Korea. It says, we reject punishment and approval, or something like that. And she said that it's from this movement because they fought for abortion rights. They got it. And she said that she has been holding it for 5 years in her phone because she's based in Netherlands. And after seeing this film, she wants me to have it.
Wow!
So I have it. It's such a treasure.
Special gift.
For this type of moment make me really, really happy. And yeah.
Well, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much for having me.
You just heard Karolina Domagalska, the director of the documentary Abortion Dream Team. If you would like to learn more and support the work of the Polish activists, you can visit their website adt.pl, but also visit them in person in Abotak in Warsaw, the first abortion center in Poland. And now, let me introduce you to another film, Mother City, directed by Miki Redelinghuys and Pearlie Joubert. In 2016, the government of Cape Town sold an abandoned school building to a private developer. This sparked a resistance movement called Reclaim the City, led by an activist Nkosikhona Swortbooi. Together with him and director Miki, we discussed the colonial origins of spatial segregation in South Africa, mass evictions and its effect on housing market today, as well as the production of the film. I want to make a disclaimer that later in this episode, you will hear fragments of the film that will include sounds of gunshots and police brutality.
Watching us from their offices, take a moment to think about the kind of a city that they want.
I need you to ask him to please leave immediately. Please. Those guys have big guns in there.
Yeah, the police are not here, so those guys are going to enforce it. They will act outside the law, and they will be fucking right.
Let's start with the film's co-director Miki introducing the film.
Mother City tells the story of a group of land and housing activists in Cape Town. A term that we use in Cape Town for the city is Mother City. And so we use that to title the film. So if everybody in South Africa knows Mother City is Cape Town, but I just feel for an international audience, I need to explain that's a kind of a nickname for Cape Town. In the case of Mother City, we use it ironically because the term mother evokes ideas of nurturing and caring. And this film shows the other side of a very iconic, very popular city, which is Cape Town, which is also very beautiful, but it's also very brutal. And we expose some of the brutality of the inequality that's still baked into the social structure of the city, which is informed by the history of apartheid.
The activist Nkosikhona Swortbooi, who is the leading voice of the film, explains the colonial history of Cape Town.
Because Cape Town, in South Africa is an important city that actually opened up the way for colonialism. Colonialism entered through Cape Town in 1652 when an East Dutch company, VOC, was traveling, transporting spices from Europe to India, from India to Europe. They would pass and then they would use Cape Town as a refreshment station. Many people in South Africa live by a concept of Ubuntu, meaning that I exist because you exist. We can only thrive better when we are a community. I will only be able to achieve my dreams if I locate myself within a particular community in the society. And so this made it easy for colonialists to come to Cape Town because we were very welcoming people. Land was dispossessed in Cape Town and violently so. Many of our black and brown people were killed as a result of resisting and fighting over land in South Africa. That's the first, important and sort of dark side of Cape Town. And what apartheid did, it was, discriminating people on the basis of the pigment of their skin. Not necessarily on their nationality. It was to some extent in terms of whether you're European or not. If you're European, you're given an upper class sort of status. But if you're black, there's a ceiling that sort of exists to say, even if you go to school and be well educated, there's a ceiling you can't pass in terms of being successful. But also for white people, white Europeans, there was a flaw of saying you can't be poor beyond this point. And the apartheid government then ensured that all white people in South Africa, educated or not, were catered for. Those who were educated, they were given higher positions within government, in administrative state, as well as in the political state. And so over time, you have, white people who have established not only their presence, but also established wealth in South Africa through our mineral resources that are continuously, even to this day, being exported to the US. And so many black people were not allowed to own land. Those who were living in the rural areas were actually forced to come to cities because there were taxes that were put in place. And what this meant is that if you had cows, if you had cattle, if you had land, you had to pay tax for that. And we come from a system of actually trading true resources. I have cattle and you have some veggies, or you're growing vegetables or food. We exchange. The value of what I have is informed by the value of what you have, and not this assumed value of currencies and money. And so people didn't have money because money was not a way of trading in Africa. The picture I'm trying to paint is how or what informs the importance of the land and housing question in South Africa. It's not one that's theoretical for us. It's one that has a deep, violent history of displacement and dispossession.
During apartheid, black and brown Cape Townians were forcibly removed from the well-located areas. They were evicted from their homes and moved to the peripheries. And we were segregated according to our racial classifications. And 30 years after democracy, very little has shifted. If you look at Cape Town, you will immediately see that is where black people live, that is where brown people live, and that is where white people live. And I draw that distinction between black and brown because that is very much embedded into the fiber of racial segregation that has come along through our apartheid past. So I think to a large extent, Cape Town's success is what's hurting its people. Cape Town's image and popularity as a world destination. You'll see in the film there's a point where the mayor said, we've been voted the top city by the UK's Telegraph newspaper just this week. And it truly is. It's a remarkable city. But the more remarkable it is, the more expensive it becomes. Our currency is very weak. So people with a stronger currency like the dollar or the euro or the pound come into Cape Town and it's much more affordable for them to access property. And so with democracy and the free market, land that previously symbolized a home suddenly starts becoming a commodity. I mean, that's what's happened globally, right? Property's become one of the strongest commodities.
We have a population of about 4 million people in the city center, in the city and its pockets. Within that 4 million, about 10% or more are precariously housed. They don't have housing. They are on the housing backlog, which is sitting at about 400,000 to 600,000. We're not sure because not everyone is on the housing database. About 14,000 plus people are homeless in Cape Town and are sleeping on the streets or in shelters. However, in the middle of that housing crisis that I'm describing now, the state is selling the last remaining pieces of land, and that is what has given birth to the movement I am from, Reclaim the City. Secondly, currently we now have about 23,564 active Airbnb listings in Cape Town, meaning that thousands of homes have been commodified in Cape Town, which now brings about this argument of Cape Town being unaffordable to many Cape Townians, because on average, a Cape Townian is earning about 4,000 to 8,000 rands. But if you are to look for the cheapest apartment, the bachelor apartment in the city centre of Cape Town, they start at about 10,000 rands. The cheapest accommodation you can find is at about 10,000. And there's a mismatch.
Yeah, the numbers don't match.
And they don't match. And that's a problem. On top of that, our mayor, Mr. Jordan Hill Lewis, has opened up a space for digital nomads to come to Cape Town. Now, we want to grow our economy through tourism, tourists to come in and invest in our city and investors. But that should not happen at the expense of Cape Townians. Because what this digital nomads movement or space would do is that it's going to further push up the property prices. Because someone who comes from Europe with their euros, the money they have is 20 times stronger than a rent, and they can actually rent the 10,000 rand bachelor unit. And that will further push up the gap in terms of what Cape Townians can and can't afford.
We have a slogan, and I want you to repeat after me. I will say Amandla. You will say Awetu. Amandla. Amandla. That means power to the people.
And when we started a movement called Reclaim the City, Reclaim the City was actually starting that conversation, which actually opened up a space and brought in a lot of people into a conversation around how do we ensure that Cape Town has more housing opportunities. The apartheid government evicted about 3 to 5 million people from the city centers of Cape Town and all of the other cities. because the idea that a black man can be closer to an economic node was one that was against the apartheid government system. Because you'll be closer, you'll be able to walk to where jobs are and find a job and not be dependent on being a security guard, a domestic worker, and working and being a servant for white people. But this government hasn't even been able to build one unit as a way of addressing the ills of the past.
So when we started filming, the focus was on the inner city, because that was this particular struggle. Reclaim the City is the housing movement that we were following, and it's their story that we tell in the film. A group of activists under the banner of Reclaim the City, wanting to enter back into the well-located areas from which they'd been removed. Historically, working with a group of very innovative lawyers, Nkosikhona Swortbooi. Nkosikhona Swortbooi means right to know. So they worked with the Nkosikhona Swortbooi legal team, and together they challenged power. They challenged political power, they challenged property power. And as we explain in the film, Nkosikhona Swortbooi is the activist, and he was the lead organizer at the time of us filming. So Nkosikhona becomes the voice in the film. It's his story, and we follow him very closely.
And now, as we speak, Nkosikhona Swortbooi from Reclaim the City is occupying the Helen Bowden Nurses' Home. Nkosikhona, good morning.
Good morning, Kino. Thank you very much for having me, and good morning to your listeners. There's two sites that we've occupied, and both properties are owned by the provincial government. The Western Cape government has proven that it is not not serious about using its allocated land. There's the spatial injustice in Cape Town.
Okay, and essentially you want affordable housing for people who are working but can't afford to live closer to the city.
Yes.
Although he represents the movement, and it's by no means a singular protagonist, there's a lot of people in the story, but his is the voice that guides the viewer through the experience. And Nkosikhona is just a phenomenal leader that represents so much hope, but also so much hurt and brutality that's been inflicted on him and his family.
My grandmother worked in Sea Point as a domestic worker for years. And my mom, I come from a very political home where politics, at some point you were not allowed to engage in politics. I come from a home where my mom, who died when I was 7, was a youth leader of the ANC, trying to grapple around the ideas of what death means. I saw people celebrating my mom, and I wanted to be that. I made a commitment to myself that if I leave this world, I want people to celebrate my existence, because I will have contributed into making this world a better one. In Cape Town currently, we have occupied 2 buildings that are owned by the government, because we are seeing that the government is selling the last remaining public land and public buildings to the private sector. And at times, they're even giving discounts.
So that is actually what drew us into the story, is the occupations, because we had been talking for months, maybe years, that we wanted to make a film that talks about race in a very open and honest way, because it felt like race relationships were just breaking down, and not just in South Africa, but around the world, there's a lot of polarization, and to just be really honest about how we deal with this. And then we started grappling with this question of, how does change happen? How do you change society? How does systemic change actually happen? If we follow these people for a very long period of time, maybe there will be change, and we can actually track change in a film. And so all these thoughts, all these ideas of talking about race and who belongs where, and equality, and how race and poverty intersects. At the same time, Reclaim the City occupied 2 disused buildings in very well-located areas of Cape Town. Especially the one building is in the waterfront. It's probably the primest piece of land on the African continent. They occupy an empty nurse's home. And so we start chatting to people through the gates and saying, how can we support the occupation as citizens of the city, and they said, well, the city's cut off the water, and we'll go, okay, cool, we can bring water. And so we became part of a group of outside supporters who would every week bring 5-litre bottles of water to the occupation to make it possible. And, you know, after many months of engagement, we realized we want to tell the story and film it. And so after a lot of engagement and asking permission, and everybody agreed. The Reclaim the City activists and the Vyšniauskas legal team and organizers agreed that we could follow them with our cameras. And so over many years, we followed their story, the occupation in the nurses' home. There's another occupation in Woodstock in a disused hospital, which has subsequently developed into a vibrant community. Inside the occupation, there's now almost 1,000 people living there, and there's creches, and there's gardening project, and there's soup kitchen, and yeah.
Never before in the history of our democracy has our country been confronted with such a severe situation. The National Coronavirus Command Council has decided to enforce a nationwide lockdown from midnight on Thursday, 26th March. All South Africans will have to stay at home. Individuals will not be allowed to leave their homes except under strictly controlled circumstances. We will prioritize the lives and the livelihoods of our people above all else.
So during COVID-19, there was a lockdown across the world. And we also had a lockdown in South Africa, in Cape Town. But there was a moratorium on evictions. The president had said that, to say no one must be evicted during this time, because the thinking of lockdown, locking people down, is to ensure that they don't move around, that they are safe. They spend their time at home. But many of the people who worked as security guards, as domestic workers, and so on, poor and working class people, could not continue paying the rent they were paying to the landlords, to whom they were given a piece of land behind a formal house to put up a shack that they can live and call a home. Once now 2 months kicked in, the landlord said, we can't take it anymore. Our relationship is informed by you paying rent. You're not paying rent, we must release you. So a large number of people were actually evicted, and they found themselves homeless, which then meant that they could not go anywhere, and they found a piece of land where they can put up their structures. After putting up their structures, the state actually destroyed all of their homes and took away those materials.
COVID lockdown, you can't move out of your own area. So Nkosikhona's lockdown in Karolis, where he's from, which is the black township in which he grew up, in an informal settlement in a shack. And through his story and through the lens and through the footage documented by the activists themselves, we see the incredible brutality inflicted by our democratically appointed security forces on black people predominantly, who are, at a time when our president is telling us to stay at home, being evicted.
The City of Cape Town's anti-land invasion unit and law enforcement agencies have come under widespread criticism following the eviction of residents from Mpolweni informal settlement in Karolis.
My message is very clear. They must go to their points where they were coming from. We have not evicted a single person, but people have invaded our land.
They're busy chasing and hunting down people.
It was a Human Settlement Department appeal that nobody get evicted from land during the lockdown.
As I've said before, Leanne, they tried to invade city-owned land, which is earmarked for development in the future.
There is nowhere for these people to go.
I deeply sympathize with the individuals who have been evicted, but because they want to be prioritized, we have lost a number of land parcels throughout the years.
I was shot at close range, rubber bullets at the back of my body, as well as being hit by a stun grenade at the back of my head. My brain was swollen for 2 days. I was blind.
happened? Did you fucking see that? Look at that shit that is happening in South Africa. For what? For what? For what? What did I do?
So how do you stay at home if somebody's broken down your house? Where do you go? So not only were people building informal structures criminalized, but then on top of that, homeless people were also criminalized and picked up in trucks. I didn't even go into this in the film, but it's just too much to cover. But homeless people were also criminalized, picked up in trucks and taken off to very, very bad living conditions.
And we are fighting on those bases to say this is gross violation of human rights, because these are people who have nothing and you're destroying the last pieces they have that they've made use to build homes for. And so the courage was understanding that I grew up in a shack. I know what it's like to be poor, and to have your home being torn apart like that. And to see people, specifically women and children, homeless, it killed me because I'm also a father. And that's why even when they were shooting at us, we kept on going.
They're refusing to reveal their names. They're not wearing any name tags. And they have these people who have confiscated people's materials. Why is it that they're confiscating people's materials? Because Section 25 of the Constitution gives us rights to own property. This is property that poor people bought with their last cents. And these criminals hiding behind these uniforms are stealing them from poor people. And we're saying that comes to an end today.
Maybe reflecting on the film, is there any particular scene that seems like key to you?
You know, the film doesn't just carry the memories of the work that we have done. It carries also the comrades that we've lost and family members that I personally have lost throughout my activism. But in terms of painting a picture of Cape Town, a scene that will do it best will be actually two scenes. When we try the opening of the film, we go and disrupt a talk of the Premier of Cape Town. A Premier may be a state governor, and they were giving this speech to the funders and supporters who are wealthy of their party. Helen Zille was the Premier of the Western Cape. And we went to this press club and disrupted that talk that she made. Ironically, she gave a speech that was defining why we were there. The first line she opened with, and this was a great coincidence, was to quote, to say, if liberty means anything, it means talking about things that will make people uncomfortable and allowing a space for democracy.
Evening fellowships, comrades, don't be afraid, we are not fighting. It cracks my heart that she's going to go forward with the sale of Africa. Let us also love in Seapoint as black people, as domestic workers, as reclaim the city. And we are not a political party. We're just here as we want you to go back to your places and dream about us when you go to sleep. Thank you.
We are selling the Tafelberg site for 135 million rand. That is not enough land to make affordable, let alone social housing.
Lies.
viable.
That's a lie. That is a lie.
Can I just finish that?
And it is a lie. And it is a lie.
I think you guys must be very, very careful because you might find a legal summons coming your way.
And there we were with banners in front of her, starting a very uncomfortable conversation in a very provocative manner. And so the film carries all of those it shows the spirit of activism that we have in Cape Town. It shows the resilience that we have when we get shot at by the police. So the film has so many great moments, sad moments, funny moments, powerful moments of the work that we have done. That's what our film does. It opens up a space for uncomfortable but important conversations.
Part of our film impact campaign is to raise awareness and to change the gaze, because the narrative that's being written about from the government perspective, the local government perspective, is that these are criminals. They've criminalized the occupations. They're land grabbers. They don't want to wait in the queue. And what right do they have to just take this building? We need to protect private property. What we're saying and what the occupation is saying, can we look at alternative models for providing housing? The city, the local government could not provide housing. This building was empty. We've moved in. We've created a community. We've created social structures. Can we work with this? So there's that kind of tug happening. One of the tactics that the activists use that we depict in the film is called an escrochase, where you take the activism to the doorstep of the person you want to reach. And there's quite a funny scene in the film where they go to Brett Herron, who at that time was in charge of housing for the city, at 4 a.m. in a very kind of leafy suburb, and set out a table outside his house, and he comes out in his pajamas, and he does come out and meet with them and engages with them even at 5 a.m.
I don't have a lot to offer, but I'm working as hard as I possibly can to add to a deficit of housing in our city and a deficit of affordable rental.
The need for housing is now, Brett. The timeline has always been an issue, and council can't even give us a definite timeline as to when development is going to start. That is why we are occupying places like the Woodstock Bay Hospital.
It's going to take a long time to turn this ship around. It's not going to be overnight, and for some people, the pain is still going to be felt because I can't do it any faster.
The pain is going to be there. The pain has been there for a lot of years. So RTC is making a noise now.
In the course of the film, you also see him leaving the city and realizing when he realizes and when he becomes disillusioned himself with the slowness of the structural change. And subsequent to that, he's become quite an ally to the activists in the film.
Mm-hmm. So I assume that people, the activists saw that it's actually a pretty good tool maybe to document the whole process on camera, right? That's the purpose that they probably saw in you being there. And that's something that I also want to explore more about, just how films can actually contribute to the communities. What do you think about cinema being a tool for a social change?
100% believe that film is a very powerful tool for social change, and we always had impact baked into the DNA of this film. Before we even, like in our very first stages of filming, we sat down with the planning and organizing team at Nkosikhona, the legal team, the strategists, and we sort of mind mapped on the table ideas for impact, because we wanted to be sure that what we want to say or what we're saying, and it really is written into the narrative of the film, but it's also aligned with what they were striving for. We sat through quite a lot of people talking about the financialization of property, because we really wanted to understand the issue in all its complexity. We were very mindful of not making a propaganda film or not being a communication tool for Nkosikhona or Reclaim the City. Yes, we wanted to tell their story and we wanted to have a social impact, and we had very clear objectives. What are things that you are fighting for, that we believe in, that we think this film can fight for? So we were very clear on our objectives and that they aligned with the objectives of the movement. Our job was to tell a story that represents a broad picture of the city and includes various perspectives. Yeah, and I think that is important. And I do think the film as it stands has definitely already shifted the gaze of many people, specifically in Cape Town, without a doubt.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's amazing that you can contribute to the change. One last question is, as a viewer maybe who's watching this film somewhere in Europe, where gentrification is actually also happening in a different kind of form, what is the main takeaway that you would like your audience who are watching the film in different countries to take away?
So one of our impact objectives is also building solidarity between housing movements across the world. I think Reclaim the City and Nkosikhona, the way activism and law works together, provides a really interesting model for strategies. So I think the film can be a valuable tool to other housing movements. But I also think it builds this kind of global knowledge and awareness of we're in the same boat. Globally, there's these big property groups like BlackRock, which are coming into cities, not just Barcelona, but also London, all over the world. The same people are buying up big chunks of property. And it's not just in Cape Town. In Cape Town, sure, it's underpinned by a legacy of dispossession. It's drawn along racial lines, in more so than in other countries, maybe. But I think the issues at the heart of it is the same. It's about greed, it's about inequality, and it's about a scramble for the dwindling resources that our planet has to offer.
Thank you so much.
That was Miki Redelinghuys, the director of the film Mother City, and Nkosikhona Swortbooi, the leading activist of housing campaign Reclaim the City in Cape Town, South Africa. We recorded this interview in March in The Hague at the human rights film festival Movies That Matter. I invite you to visit the official website of Reclaim the City or read the guide on the housing market in Cape Town, which you can find at the bottom of this episode's publication text. What stayed with me the most after speaking with the filmmakers and activists was a deep admiration of their hard work and persistence in documenting complex processes, often in dangerous circumstances. While the impact of these films may not be immediately visible, they do more than simply inform the audiences. By sharing personal stories, they become powerful engines of empathy. They can inspire awareness and, ultimately, lead to systemic change. I want to thank you for listening. I hope you find this episode worth your time, and I'll see you next time.
The episode you just heard was produced by Nojus Setkauskas, our fellow at the Perspectives Journalism Initiative. Perspectives is an international newsroom bringing together journalists from the Czech Republic, Germany, Slovakia, Poland, Hungary, Lithuania, Estonia, and Ukraine. It's co-financed by the European Union with the full independence of each newsroom. The episode was recorded and edited by Nojus himself and was mixed by Kata Bitowt. The co-editors were Austėja Pūraitė and me, Karolis Vyšniauskas. NARA is a long-form journalism nonprofit based in Vilnius, Lithuania, and if you want to support our work, we are greatly thankful for everyone who is doing that. The address is nara.lt/support. Once again, nara.lt/support. That is it for today. Thank you, and talk to you soon.